Hi traders, Mandy here from High Performance Trading. Did you realize that every trader has an Achilles heel? Now, the question is, what is your Achilles heel and how can you find that out? You see, most traders believe that their real challenge is a lack of discipline, that that's the biggest problem. But often the real problem is something much, much deeper. It's a recurring behavioral pattern that keeps sabotaging our successes. And so today I want to talk to you about the Achilles heel in trading and how that actually plays out in specifically in a trade. So most of the time, traders keep repeating the same patterns, how they mess up a trade, how they create losses, how they turn a great equity curve into nothing. It's always the same pattern. So step one, you really have to look at what is the behavior that I keep repeating over and over again that leads to me, staying stagnant or messing up my performance. And what's fascinating is actually that most traders don't realize that it is one single pattern of behavior that's responsible for most of the mistakes that they make. And only once we have made our forensics on our trading statistics, then we will be able to have a look at that. I mean, there's so many trading softwares out now, like TradeSwiss and TradeZilla. I have to say they give a lot of false readings called Starter. I have a trader, he used TradeZilla, imported all his trades into it, and I'm like, dude, your MFA, like, how far your trade went into profit before you actually took it and closed the position. They're like off the charts. Like, look how much money you left on the table. And then we went through each and every trade and we realized that it was completely wrong. So the way TradeZilla calculated his MFA was wrong. So we have to be careful with the new ones. I found that the old ones, the clunky ones like TraderView, they're still working really well, and EdgeWonk is working really well as well. And so yeah, be careful. Check the data. Okay, maybe run it through Claude or ChatGPT just to double check. Now, the good news is once we identify the real underlying issue, then we can work through whatever it is that is standing in the way to incredible trading success for us. Now, I work with a trader really closely whose Achilles heel was the habit of panic closing his positions at the first sign of retracement. And it was, you wouldn't even allow to hit a stop loss. That's how panicky he would get. Like he did not want to risk a single dollar. And the reality is we have to, right? As traders, that's our job. Now, let me share the screen for you so you actually have a visual what that looked like. And you can see the heartbreak here. So you can see what happened was that he bought Micron back in April 2025, I believe. And that was pretty much at the low, right? So he bought when it reached that level and no, sorry, he bought when it reached that level. His stop loss was down here. And you can see the next few days, Micron proceeded to just gap down and just be a little volatile. And even though his original stop loss was here at the 61% retracement, he is like, oh, it's no point, and he closed it early just to see it rally up again. And then he thought, so that's this year, right? And then he thought, okay, I'm going to buy again. And then there was another little retracement. And again, he penny closed his position. And then he lost completely his self-trust. And Micron essentially kept going to $800. He kept trading a few trades on Micron and did well. That was one of the breakouts that he took. But that's not the point, right? He could have had a beautiful trade, trending trade with a $500 move. So now what's happening here? So in this trade, he really had an excellent level. So he knows the strategy works. He knows his risk management works. And yet there was this lack of self-trust to let the trade run and trying to save a few dollars, frankly. Like you would have saved $100 in loss if it had really hit a stop loss. And it's not really much. I mean, he's got a big enough account to handle that. So there must have been something else. And this is emotionally devastating when you leave so much money on the table. And it's not so much about the money, also, it's more about that, he learned that he can't trust himself. He learned that he's someone who keeps messing up. He's learned that he's someone who keeps missing out on the goodness of life. And so the question beckons is, why did he keep micromanaging his trade? So that was his Achilles heel. And, again, traders always think it's simply a lack of discipline, but there's so much more to it. And, he said, well, next time I will do it better. But then in the heat of the moment, we keep repeating the same mistake again. So there must be a better way to manage our mindset. And what really happened here was that he had made some bad financial decisions in his life. Actually, had made some bad life decisions that ended up with a consequence that was painful for him. And again, not just once, but several times. So now he had become overly cautious in his life. He was so determined and so worried about making a bad decision that, of course, there was a lack of self-trust in him. Even though logically he trusted his strategy, logically he trusted his risk management, on an unconscious, deeper level, there was just this, this fear. And it's like someone who has burnt themselves at the stove. That will always stay with them, and they will always fear burning themselves again at the stove. And I think it was Mark Douglas who had this beautiful example of a dog biting you. And then even though you love dogs, you will always be a little bit apprehensive of dogs. And that was certainly my experience. When I was little, I think I was like, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. I was already riding a bike because I was on a bike and we were riding down a hill. And then a German Shepherd came from the left, and I still have this vivid memory of it, even 50 years later. This dog jumping over the fence, and then he bit my leg. So he just bit my leg and he didn't let go. And thank God the owner was there. He jumped over the fence himself and immediately cut him off. And it wasn't a big deal. They have a little scar, but nothing happened really. And I love dogs. And I know dogs love me too. But there's always this little apprehension of, is he going to bite me or not? It's really deep inside. So for him, it was the same. And that showed up as an internal conflict directly in his trading behavior. That was his Achilles heel. So his trading mistakes pretty much reflected this deeper emotional pattern. Now the question is, how do you begin identifying your Achilles heel? It's about understanding what is going on for you. Do you trust your strategy? Do you trust your risk management? Do you trust following through on your risk management and your strategy? Because you can have the best strategy in the world. If you don't follow it, it's worth nothing. And we see that a lot in health as well, right? So people who have diabetes, for example, and they know they shouldn't eat as much sugar and they still eat it and then use insulin to counteract it. But it's not the healthiest thing to do, is it? So we need to look at the deeper level, like why is it that I have this need to eat so much sugar in that context of health? There is a physiological reason where the body is craving sugar once it's used to that dopamine effect and all these biomechanical things going on in our body. And also the emotional, what is sugar and chocolates and whatever the sweetness is that someone is craving, what standing does it have in someone's life? How is that self-soothing? How is that comforting? And how can they increase the capacity for handling stress and emotional challenges as well? And that's exactly the same in trading. How can you increase your capacity to handle the emotional pressure that comes with, your trade nearly being taken out and having to take a loss. And it's almost the feeling of a loss of control. So what we did was he's really good with Claude. So he took his trades, we put them into Claude. He knew what questions to ask. And then we looked at how many times did he micromanage his trade and the trade then going to continue into profits. So ask yourself, what is the mistake that you keep repeating over and over and over again? And there's a beautiful spreadsheet from Tom Dante, Trader Dante. It's called the Demon Finder. And you simply list like the 10 main mistakes a trader can make. Cutting losses too short, sorry, that would be great, right? Cutting profits too short, letting losses run, um, going on tilt, um, as I said, micromanaging by taking stops before your trade hit the stop loss. Like, then you make a list every time you make that mistake, you give it a little tick. And then you look after 10 trades, what was the mistake that you kept repeating most of the time? Like, keep it super simple. At what emotional moment did you abandon your process? What happened? What feeling are you trying to escape? And what belief about yourself gets triggered when you are feeling under pressure? And once you identify the core pattern of how you keep self-sabotaging over and over again, how do you think about trading and your trade just the moment before you start doing something stupid? You can finally begin changing it at the root instead of fighting the symptoms endlessly, because fighting the symptoms at the level of discipline is not going to cut it. But you really need to go deeper and say, what is it that I'm trying to avoid by making these mistakes? What fear is driving it? So I was also talking to a trader recently, and he has to reach a certain income goal because he's trading for a firm. And he's worried that if he doesn't hit that goal, that he's going to be kicked out. And so he started increasing his position size. And what happened was exactly that. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. He had even more losses, and now he's really at risk. So now he really needs to get his act together, start focusing, and just take one good trade at a time. And I know he can make it, right? He has the skill. He just needs to stay focused and strong and not give in to these urges and temptations that we all are at the mercy of. So it is a very important insight. The market, of course, exposes what's happening internally and not just financially. I hope you found that useful. And as I always say, every successful trader has a dark past, and every losing trader, therefore, has a bright future. Good luck.